was the driver of the guest to your party, to your party. I was the baker of the sweets for your party, for your party. I was the singer of the songs at your party, at your party. All of the tune you wanted to hear. Happy to you, depressing to me.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Outernational podcast. And welcome back, and thank you to those of you who are returning for this one. I'm your host, Amrita Kadambi. I'm a musician and an activist and an educator. And I talk to musicians about what they think our role should be in these incredibly insane, but also very revolutionary times. Many of my guests are also musicians who are activists or are musicians who are just grappling with the questions of this time, either on stage or on social media or in their musical practice itself. And in this episode, I sit down with an old friend, Greg Saunier, who you might know from the legendary experimental indie rock band Deerhoof. And as a Bay Area kid, Deerhoof was my gateway to so many weirdo and avant and experimental bands and music. So it meant a lot to me to be able to talk to Greg about Deerhoof's early days before the tech boom. And also, it just happened to be that we recorded this episode the same day the band announced their decision to leave Spotify because of its military AI tech investments. So in this episode, we talk about that decision and also all of the various entanglements and maybe responsibilities we have as musicians when it comes to the capitalist, imperialist, military, industrial complex, but also what maybe we can do about it. So without further delay, here's my conversation with the drummer and co-founder of Deerhoof, Greg Saunier.
Yeah, a funny thing about Deerhoof is like a tension between those two. It's like each of the four of us has that control freak, ivory tower, version of ourselves. And then when we actually play a show, it's funny because the last show we played was 2 days ago. It was here.
Right here at Pioneer Works in Brooklyn.
And it was, just right down there downstairs. And we'd been playing more or less the same set list for a couple months now, but every night it's different, and in Pioneer Works it's different, and a lot of that is social. Some of it is the acoustics, certain things don't work in a really cavernous room this.
This is a tricky room, I gotta say.
Yeah. But it's tricky if you play too fast or if you play too many really quiet details. They get buried. So it's more like bolder gestures,
Mm-hmm.
But it's social too. And it's you can, because if you're playing, you can sort of have a gut feeling about whether the person in the back row, are they getting anything out of this, And so you're trying to make it big for them, make it audible. And in a small venue, like a venue that we might more normally play, where it's 200 or 300 capacity, it's you can get away with a lot of really tiny stuff. Play tiny little ghost notes on the drums, and the person in the back row still is hearing it all.
In a more club, a small club.
Exactly.
Setting.
Yeah. So that's part of the social thing too, but it doesn't necessarily appear to be social. It's not I'm sitting there having conversation and we're doing high fives and laughing and smiling and stuff. It's more the part of being social in which you're trying to have empathy for the other person, and in this case, many hundreds of other people, but you're trying to put yourself in their shoes and try to imagine what they're experiencing, what they're hearing and seeing stuff. And that's part of being social too.
And empathy for your bandmates.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The other part of it is like the four of us together, you know, like we've been playing so long that it feels very loose. And so it's not just the acoustics or the audience. It's also us. Like,
right.
Somebody might make a mistake or just like add in some flourish that none of us have ever heard before, and everybody else reacts, you know, and it's like, or somebody starts the song too slow, and so okay, we're gonna play it at that speed tonight, you know, or
I mean that's the fun of it. Like
totally, I mean,
it never stops evolving and changing.
And like the most of our songs are so simple that they really can like work. You know, you play it, let's play it as a slow song tonight. Let's play it as a fast song tonight. Not that we ever plan it, but it just happens. And, there's a lot of interaction. And it's like, I think that actually gets better, you know? It's weird. Like, I think we were more control freaks in the early days. And we've become more relaxed with each other and like, it feels it feels more like an experiment now than it did when we started.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
The Sun Ra has this thing of where he, like, when he talked about the Sun Ra Orchestra and just making music in general, where he talked about the idea of discipline and like he was incredibly
Saturn is the
rigorous.
planet of discipline.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
And he was so rigorous, and it was like obviously he was so exacting, and he had such a vision. But at the same time, it's like
you hear the performances; they're all over the place.
Total liberation and freedom, and like sometimes I think those things can be together of like rigor and just like they're not mutually exclusive, and almost like the more like familiar you are with your bandmates, the more you've played together, the tighter it is, the looser it can get. I mean, the looser it can
I think
be.
that takes more discipline to be able to improvise. Not that I consider Deerhoof to be great improvisers or anything, or on the level of any of the various orchestras over the decades, but you know, to be able to copy a recording does take a certain discipline.
Yeah.
To be able to speak a language, that's going to take a lot more discipline.
Right, which is what improvising kind of is.
I mean, that's how it feels to us, for sure.
Yeah. Did you improvise in those early days? I feel like we met maybe in I moved here around 2009, and I think we played some shows at Death by Audio and with Sam Mickens of Shoo. I can't remember if I was wearing a cape or maybe Sam was wearing a cape, but there was some costuming involved.
No
but
doubt.
Part of why I came here was because of the improvised music scene, because there was so much just experimentation going on. Was that like in San Francisco when Deerhoof started? Was that part of the scene? Was improvisation part of the scene?
Yes, but the difference between San Francisco and New York, I mean, only stating the obvious, is just how much smaller San Francisco is geographically. So, yes, but it was the same people.
Yeah.
It was the same people in different quote-unquote music scenes in San Francisco, you know. It's like, oh, well, this is when I do my improv with these people. And then, but tomorrow night I'm playing this, you know, rock show, or I'm playing jazz show, or I'm playing reggae show, metal show, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, here I think you can actually, like, that subculture is so big and contains so many people that it literally has its own venues and has its own scene. And if you wanted to, you could be a New Yorker who just subsists entirely on a diet of free improvisation.
Which
is
every
night of the week,
which happens.
which I know,
which definitely happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of what when I was young in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, and I was going to places like 924 Gilman and Berkeley and things like this, that I was attracted to, and maybe why I was attracted to bands like Deerhoof was that there was a DIY spirit to it that was more, it felt like more than just aesthetics. It wasn't like, oh, all these bands, oh, this band sounds like, like it wasn't like all the bands sounded the same. Like I remember seeing Hella and you guys and it seemed like more a value system. Do you feel like DIY had an ethics and a value system that was core to you in some way that you continue? Because I know Deerhoof has maintained a certain kind of value system. Do you feel like that kind of community had a certain set of values that you as a person feel resonated with you?
Yes, of course, but it wasn't just the it wasn't the community. I mean, we were. I sometimes have to acknowledge how lucky I am, how lucky Deerhoof was. The timing. It might sound unlucky because we started like Deerhoof's first practice actually was the day Kurt Cobain died. And we were kind of playing grunge. And, it's like...
and it was like, now grunge is dead.
And it was. It was like almost overnight.
Yeah.
Almost every rehearsal studio was soon to become the office space for some .com startup.
Right.
And most of the venues where where a lot of people, were doing like some kind of wild music. There was a lot of wild music in the mid 90s, and I'm sure even before I got there in 91. A lot of joke bands, a lot of costume bands, a lot of noise. Noise was kind of had a mini trend, and we sort of like showed up right as like music that had guitars or anything like that was just like, okay, bye, done.
Yeah.
It's dead. And everything was moving to electronic dance music. Although San Francisco was not yet quite the monstrosity of a tech-oriented stereotype that it is now, it was also then, internet, it was like burgeoning, internet place, and people were really into anything electronic. And it was the Clinton years, and the billboards at the time were all about how you could retire at age 31 because you're going to make a killing in the stock market, and
a new tech startup,
exactly.
And you're good for life. Now it's an app. Now you just have to be an app developer.
Well, that's just it. So during Nirvana's career, it was a topic of discourse that, like, did they sell out?
Right.
How much did they sell out? Then you get Steve Albini record your record, and it's like, oh no, they're still doing the real thing. And then like the Sex Pistols had their reunion, and like called their reunion "Filthy Lucre" or whatever, and like the the concept of selling out was still a thing. I think that there was a mass disillusionment in sort of the music discourse that at the time was still largely influenced by print magazines like Rolling Stone and Spin, that are now very much receded into the distant background,
or have just
discourse.
Been like subsumed
exactly.
into whatever mainstream larger corporate media conglomerates at this point.
So the when I was reading do you know that book No Logo by Naomi Klein? I bought it once on tour.
Yeah.
And she was talking about this moment when there was a brief late 90s resurgence of it was like the neo swing revival and like Squirrel Nut Zippers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And and that she posited that actually started because of Gap ads that had these
I
swing
remember
dancers.
them. I remember
that
those
actually
ads.
preceded the musical trend. It was the first time ever that a corporate ad campaign selling pants, or
pants
whatever
were the
item
inspiration.
was the inspiration.
The
And then
khakis.
people got into it, and then all this swing dancing classes started and stuff, and then all these bands popped up doing,
That's wild.
revivals. And that reversal was kind of the death knell of the idea that even selling out was even a concept anymore.
Right.
And that people who were young and growing up with that Gap ad would see it not as selling out, but see it as like a plus and a thing that you need to do in order to have a career. And I think that that in the 25 years since then, I mean, the idea of a DIY, I mean, what it was for us then, sure, I can pat myself on the back and say it was an ethos. What it was a necessity. We didn't have any budget to play with, and we never had any budget subsequently. What we gained with doing everything ourselves was total control.
Yes, and freedom to Yeah.
And so instead of losing your entire year's savings for 3 days in a recording studio to make an album that you wish you could have mixed a little differently, or I think I could have played a better guitar solo, but I was running out of time. You spend like a year or two making a record on your own, just working on it nonstop all day, every day.
And you still are making records.
And that's
in
how we
this
still do
way.
it. So we got so used to that for us, it was really a stretch, an experiment to start and finish a record in a recording studio, which we did a couple of years ago on the previous record. And that felt like that was us like experimenting, trying something we'd never done before,
Right.
like relinquishing a little bit of control.
But you must have been approached over the years by all kinds of cushy studios and producers and
Not
entities.
really.
Not
No,
really?
No. We're big in your heart,
But you really, you are.
We're a small time band.
You are, but I
know.
think
Nobody
maybe
knows
if
who we
you, maybe it would have been easy to seek out those opportunities
Maybe.
if you wanted to.
Maybe,
and maybe
so. I don't know.
But it's interesting what you're saying about, the Gap ad. Now I have to go back and read that Naomi Klein
Yeah,
because
no logo.
I really remember that moment, and you're right. Like the discourse around selling out almost
Right.
seems quaint now because
Exactly.
it felt like at that time there was more of a choice of like if you wanted to align yourself
Right.
with certain corporate interests or something like
Exactly.
this. And I think maybe where we're at, 25 years later, which is kind of what's really on my mind is.
Yeah.
We talk about this idea that there's no ethical consumption in capitalism, but I think at this point, it's also very, very true that there's no ethical production in capitalism. And maybe because capitalism, in my mind, is wholly unethical, maybe there never was.
Right.
But let's say as musicians, people who we have a certain way of thinking about music, whether it's like that we want it to be non-hierarchical, that we don't want, suffering to be created because of our music.
Right.
It seems like now you don't have the choices are becoming more and more and more limited about, how to do these things ethically. And we become very complicit. And I saw, just today, you posted on both on your Instagram and the Deerhoof Instagram that you're bringing all your music off Spotify, and that's just one of the components, right? Is like the music distribution.
Right.
I guess how do you as a band and how have you over the years made decisions in that sense of like how to deal with that level of complicity? It seems kind of all consuming at this point.
It's just I think that to say there's no ethical consumption or production is, of course, has a grain of truth to it, but is also a very handy way to cop out, and say that therefore
Who cares?
exactly.
I have no responsibility in this system.
And I think that we have been lucky in that the amount of pressures that have been put on us to say who cares and to say your ethos is quaint, like you just said. But if you want to play in the big leagues, we haven't had that many people try to do that. And I think that the few times it has happened, I don't know what it is, but maybe just it's probably nothing more than no member of Deerhoof ever believed that superstardom was just actually around the corner for our band. We're like, there's no way. No, I just don't think that we believed in our ability to. I think we have always believed in our ability to survive in capitalism, but not our ability to win at it, or to even participate in trying to win at it. We just want to survive. We want to not have our band die, and so I think that, there's back in the Bay Area, there was this Japanese restaurant that we loved a lot called Chaya. It was vegan vegan Japanese restaurant.
I remember the place was so good.
And it was often a big conversation where we'd ask somebody who was working there, every night you had to stand on the sidewalk in line for half an hour to get in this tiny place.
Yeah.
Why don't you expand? Why don't you open a couple more branches? They're like, no, it's working. This is enough. Business is great.
Yeah. We
and
don't
it's just
need more
that
than
idea
this.
of enough. That's not the rule under capitalism, because in its purest form, infinite growth is mandatory.
Yeah, growth and expansion.
But there is such a thing as ethical production within that system. A place like Chaya, a mom and pop, can survive and do just fine.
And Deerhoof is a mom and pop.
Well, that's what I started to think.
Yeah.
It's just a small business, and the idea of enough. I think that there has been a long period in which, ever since that sort of gap change, in which the idea of your friend's indie band, got some great opportunity. They got their song into an ad for, Microsoft or something. And that everybody would applaud you and say good on them. They're hacking the system. They're beating the man. They must be taking 6 figures off of that CEO or something. For whatever reason, Deerhoof has not had the opportunity to even attempt that kind of stuff. I mean, we've turned down a few ads. Target was one that would have paid us a lot of money. But basically, it's just I don't know. We just knew that it would kill us. I mean, it just once you've discovered that the people who like your music like it for certain reasons, that it surprises them, it's unpredictable, or that it always seems to be a little bit underground, you know, and it never like sounds like it's trying to sell out, or it never actually, you know, has a hit or anything. And that becomes part of the charm. And we all know what that feels like when we have a favorite band that you know, that really isn't that big, you know, and the mainstream doesn't know about them, and it's like they're speaking in code to you, you know, and it's like a secret handshake, you know.
And sometimes it's not even something you can help. Like, personally, I think it's hard for me to separate what drew me towards,
Right.
you know, more experimental sounds or noisy sounds or things that were just sort of like, you know, sonically against the whatever the mainstream was. I don't know if it was just that I was always a tiny ardent anti-capitalist who was like, you know, I want to do anything that's counter to the market, the
Right.
mainstream market, or if it was just I had a curiosity about these sounds, and then those things aligned like as values
Totally.
somehow, you
But
know.
they aren't. That's just it. It's like, it's the what's that guy's name? That Caribbean philosopher who talks about the
Stuart Hall?
the right of opacity or something. I forget his name. He has a French name.
Not Césaire was Martinican, I think. Anyway,
We'll figure it out. You'll put it in the caption for the because the right of opacity is you have the right to not be understood. You have the right to say things that go over the heads of your colonizers, you know, and that he's speaking on, you know, from the perspective of a colonized population. And Glisson, that's his name.
Glisson, yeah, of course.
And I don't know, you know, when I read this just, it was like a ton of bricks, because that's what it is. When you're talking about music that that major label record exec, you know, David Geffen, he wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to understand it. And I think that speaking in code becomes more and more crucial when for example, all of your utterances, you know, all of your contributions to culture, it's mandatory that they be mediated via Spotify, via Instagram. And so they're going through corporate platforms, and not just corporate, but literally, I mean,
this really
oligarchs. I mean, you're talking like multi-billionaires who have designs on you know, in X case, you know, the militarization of the globe with artificial intelligence, computerized warfare that will use facial recognition that sometimes fails, or it will you know, plow through spreadsheets of names
for bombing
and
campaigns.
Addresses
Yeah.
for this, and the computer will just decide, okay, this building's next. Boom, poof, all those people are instantly incinerated. You know, as a way to automate warfare and take human emotion out of the equation of it, so that there's no remorse involved, you know, a way of advancing warfare to be more efficient. You know, it's like a Star Trek episode or something.
And the
you know.
idea that not just that maybe you can wash your hands of it
Totally.
morally, but also that it's like, no, it's smart. It's smart bombs.
I
It's
mean,
smart,
and it's
you
an
know?
investment, so that it's going to make him a lot of money. It's going to make whoever invests in it a lot of money. And then if you're talking about Instagram and, you know, the Zuckerberg's thing, you know, it's clear that he's very interested in political control, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, Trump probably would not have won the first time had it not been for Facebook's. That's why Deerhoof left Facebook. I mean, had it not been for Zuckerberg's and Cambridge Analytica and all that stuff, the sort of enabling of a whole lot of misinformation because it's very profitable for him. And then it looked for a while like maybe, now I'm going to be a Democrat and I'm going to run for president.
No. You align with wherever the power, whoever has the power. So
my point being that both of them are clearly authoritarian and fascist and wish to dominate. They see the human race as so many data points for their potential domination and control.
I saw Peter Thiel was asked. He struggled with a question recently where he was asked if he, feels that it would be good for the human race to survive, or if he cared about the survival of the human race. He really struggled to answer that question because it doesn't seem like he really does, right?
Right.
Or he thinks he can live beyond it. And I think there's a psychosis also at play when you.
It might not be a psychosis.
Maybe not.
Maybe a few of them will. I mean, Naomi Klein's most recent, actually, ironically, publication was a pretty long essay with Astra Taylor where they discussed this exact topic and the super billionaires. Along with Trump and members of the ruling class, what really is their vision for the future? It would appear to the untrained eye that they're simply destroying it, but in fact, what they're doing is setting up enclaves for themselves that will be protected by the military and the police. Which, I wonder why. Doesn't matter what party's in power, the Pentagon budget and the police budgets just keep going up.
Yeah.
The police keep getting more militarized, and
But the fantasy also is that somehow the police
and borders.
The fantasy is RoboCop, right? Eventually, even the police and the military, it's that there won't be people that you have to deal with their needs and the resources.
You don't have to pay the
and their
slaves
families.
or house the slaves anymore. You just have robots do it, and so you'll be in your protected enclave that no one can enter.
But it's crazy because it's a Spotify already. Let's say before we found out about this Daniel Ek $700 million investment in what's the company called? It's
Helsing is the
Helsing.
German AI warfare company, and then he has his own. I forget what it's called, but some kind of partnership or something what they were doing was fundraising, fundraising to invest in Helsing.
Military tech. And then, but even before that, his investments included all kinds of things in weapons and military industrial.
I think it was always Helsing, actually.
It was always Helsing.
I think so.
That
I'm not
it was
an expert, but
it
I
was
think it was
kind of
always
leading up to that.
Yes, he simply increased his share and his stake and his controlling interest. Now he's chairman. I don't know exactly how long he's been chairman, but I know that it's been news for 1 week.
And before that, it was already, we were paying 0.004 cents per stream. And it was already from a labor perspective, all of that was awful. Sure. But it's not just Spotify to contend with, right? We find out South by Southwest is, the CIA is sponsoring events and doing talks, or Tony Blair at London South by Southwest. Or, that how the level of complicity of certain festivals being owned by major companies that also have ties. I work at a university. My university is so
obviously that's a major controversy. Yeah,
and it can feel like not just to absolve ourselves of the responsibility of it's too big, I can't do anything. Why care? Because I definitely do care, but I think it does feel overwhelming. So a decision for me to see Deerhoof today say, we're done with Spotify and this is why, or on the most recent record of Noble and Godlike,
Noble and Godlike in ruin.
In ruin, yes. I feel like I'm missing a word. Noble and Godlike in ruin.
The "and" was missing.
Yeah. Releasing a single on Craigslist.
Oh yeah.
How are those decisions made as a band? Why now for Spotify, or why Craigslist, or And what does it, because for me to see it as another musician,
Right.
like I do have my music on Spotify and I've known this stuff about Spotify for a
Right,
very,
right.
very, very
We
long
all do.
time.
Yeah, totally.
And now that I saw, it does make a difference to see you guys do it. It's like, you know what? It's not that hard. I'm not making any money off of it. Why am I still on there? Like, what is it? What does it do for us? How do you come to these decisions over the years? I mean, it's not just these things.
It's privilege. The members of Deerhoof have not had it beaten out of us by quote unquote experts. I mean, there have been a couple times where we've hired, publicity companies and stuff who advise us to do this and advise us not to do that and blah, blah, blah. We just never believed them. And then we're like, this campaign was silly. We're not hiring them next time. It didn't, they overpromised, it's just the usual stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I really think that music does have something to do with it. And it's what you were saying. It's not disconnected from the music genre.
Mm-hmm.
And if your music genre has free improvisation in it, it's not just like, that's not irrelevant because the improvisation is all about trusting your gut. And it's like,
and
I think
the
that's
other
the only
people
reason.
around you, right?
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like when this headline hit this week, I just brought, we've been on tour. We were in the car together. I just brought it up like, oh man, I'm kind of feeling like, do we even still want to be on this? And then my own band was just like, yeah, let's just get off, I mean, it took us 5 minutes, to decide. Of course, then it took us like days and hours of meetings and stuff with the other people whose finances would be affected,
like the label.
Labels and
are they pretty supportive or
yes,
Joyful Noise?
they were. Joyful Noise is the label we're currently on and have been for several years, for about almost 10 years, and yeah, they were. But I mean, there were a lot of factors to discuss, and it was complicated. And I mean, honestly, the nature of that conversation was like a lot of reasons were given why Spotify is actually important to our career, and every new reason they gave was like, that's even more reason we don't want to be on it.
Like, what are some of the reasons that?
Well, just because that's how people are discovering it.
Except
we are
there's all these
making some
algorithms
income.
that are like actually.
I know, but
Yeah.
They were starting to feel that they were getting a handle on, again, hacking it, tweaking it, like whatever. Like they were able to play the game. They were figuring out how to get more numbers, for us or any of their bands. And it feels a little like a slot machine. There is something addictive to feeling like you've almost mastered, you've almost figured out the secret code that will grant you a victory, on some digital platform or whatever. Whether it's Spotify, whether it's streaming, whether it's just search engines, and like, where you appear in a search result or something. And you always feel like you've almost cracked the code. You know?
But then the finish line kind of moves.
It's always a moving goalpost, and that's literally the business model, is to keep everybody trying to figure it out like it's a game, and keep them engaged in it. And it's just like when you're literally in the middle of a tour and like people are clapping for you every night and they're singing along with your songs and, coming up to the merch table and telling you that they like your music. Like, I'm like, my ego's like in a pretty good place, whatever.
You don't need to
care
win.
what the numbers are, just we're fine.
Yeah.
We'll just do some more tours. And if we have to play slightly small venues, it's fine. We'll do what we can. But it's like at some point I know that there have been connections between the rich, the powerful, and the military and the police
Always.
since I mean, certainly during the history of capitalism, at least 500 years, that's been very strong. And of course, really the history of empires, that's always been the case.
Capitalism and imperialism seem they've had a relationship from the beginning. They can't really
Exactly.
exist without
Capitalism
each other.
is just a newer revision of imperialism. It's a version that started, whatever in Venice or something, at a certain point, and then became the Spanish and Portuguese empires, and then became the Dutch Empire, and then became the British Empire, and then became the American Empire. And each of them collapsed, and we're watching ours collapse now. And they all follow a similar trajectory. And one of the ways that collapse is brought about is that while there always has been this connection between the rich, powerful, and weapons, in these late stages of empires, it becomes exaggerated, and so the the economy becomes overly financialized. In our case, it's called Wall Street, but where it all becomes about financial speculation, and that empire is no longer producing actual goods and services that anyone wants or that have any value. It's all just about a imaginary numbers game and playing with, exactly. And so that's where our economy is. And then the other thing is propping the economy up on an overextended empire that can only be maintained with guns or weapons. And that was the downfall of every empire, and that's what we're seeing. And there does come a point where the inhabitants of that empire,
i.e. you and I,
become sort of forced. It's like, how far are you willing to let this go? And for us, it was just like, okay, like we could deal with the fact that we aren't paid well on Spotify. It's still a net win for us. But as soon as it's like you sit there and watch for over a year.
Yeah, it's horrific.
Biden and Netanyahu teaming up to slaughter a people, to exterminate a people using AI battle tech, and then your guy over in Sweden is like, oh, guess what he's investing in?
Yeah.
And it's literally like, we just saw what that does to human life. We just saw what that does to a culture. It erases it. You just saw what it does to hospitals, what it does to schools, what it does to journalists, what it does to aid workers, what it does to communities, what it does to histories, and what its intention is. Its intention is the utter removal of a people in order for it to be replaced by a different people who are richer and who need the poorer one out of the way.
And that it is Western imperialism, and it is, for me, it feels like almost like the last stand of it in some way. Why it feels so utterly violent, on such a horrific scale. And it's like the more we learn about, okay, this is how tech is being used in Palestine, but we also know more and more about, well, what is fueling the war in the Congo and the civil war in the Sudan and these mineral, like the extraction of minerals, and it's so much of it is tied to tech, because this is the production of our time. But I guess like in this, so you and I are citizens of this empire, and I know for me, like when I was first listening to, like, Apollo was 2003, and I remember that there was like a anti-Iraq war messaging, and it's to talk about opacity for a second, like. I like that you brought up. I'm glad you remembered that it was Glissant, because I think he's just one of these consciousness raising theorist for me too, where it's like I read it and it was like things that I had inklings of deep in somewhere in my soul, and then it's like, oh, that's it.
I know.
It's consciousness expanding stuff, and I think music is also one of those things that has been consciousness expanding stuff. And when I remember seeing like the Apple O album cover, and it's like it looks like an atom bomb, but it also looks like a bit of an apple. But is opacity part of how you think about the I hate to say political music, because I think I've even read you say this in an interview, and I've thought about this too, of like, what does that mean? All music is political. Everything you do is political. But it almost reminds me of like in Tropicalia music, like in Brazil during the dictatorship, they're like, how do we get these subversive messages to the people? Is that part of the way of Deerhoof? Yes.
Yes. It's like, it's not that we invented it. It's that we are participating in a long, human tradition of I don't know. Just think of like fairy tales or something. They mean one thing to a child, and they mean another thing to a teenager. They mean another thing to a grown adult. It might mean something else to some person at the end of their life. The same tale, or the same myth or whatever. Has many possible readings and interpretations, and it's like the story is different every time you hear it or read it or whatever. And that's always like, of course, like some kind of artistic holy grail, is to have it mean multiple things. You could map different things onto it, but also to have it I mean, speaking of AI, I think that it would be cool to make music that would be difficult for AI to imitate, because maybe your songs are too different from each other, or like there's too many different styles happening within one song. And it would be hard to train AI. And another advantage we've had is we've never had a hit song. So we aren't associated with one song. We aren't associated with one sound. And so it's like, that's a way of like being like mercury. Every time you like try to put your finger on it, it slips away, and trying to always escape. And misdirection, you know what I mean? And trying to trick people, And I think that for people who like Deerhoof, which doesn't need to be everybody on Earth, we're not Daniel Ek, we're not Mark Zuckerberg, and we're not Biden or Trump or whatever. We don't need millions of people to agree, We just need enough, like Chaya, that restaurant. We just need enough so that we can make a living, hand to mouth, and which we are doing. And so it's okay to speak in code. It's okay to speak with double meanings. It's okay if some people don't understand, if some people don't get it, and some people just think it's a bunch of noise. That's fine. I don't care. So it's all right.
But that opacity has changed a little bit over the years, or at least like from my perspective, it seems like definitely I was having fun doing the decoding when I was young, especially because I was I was involved with anti-Iraq war protests, and I was studying peace and conflict studies in college. So I was really like attracted.
Were you at Berkeley?
I was at Loyola Marymount University, but my major was music and my minor was peace and conflict studies. And so I was attracted to that kind of decoding, but I feel like I've actually seen like from there to Mountain Moves, like in the first Trump era, to this record with this collaboration with Saul Williams, maybe a more direct, a little more overt, and then that coinciding also with social media, where I see also how Saul Williams has been using social media in the
he's
last
a big inspiration. That's part of it.
Yeah, and then seeing now your Instagram is like, yes, there are some album promo music things, but there's a lot of very direct political discourse. Do you see those things as connected? And like,
it's a good question. I mean, I think I thought of it just as like Ed had been doing the Instagram for a long time, and then he got sick of doing it, but he didn't tell anybody. He just suddenly Deerhoof wasn't posting, so I'm like, well, I better post something.
Yeah.
You know? So then another thing that happened was so Ed had been delegated. Basically, it was one of those things. The label we were on at the time, maybe 2014. Was Polyvinyl, and they said, you guys know what you need to do, right? You need to get on social media.
Oh, boy.
And so they said, okay, so somebody start doing a Twitter account, somebody start doing an Instagram account. And Ed was like, oh, fine, I'll do the Instagram. And I said, fine, I'll do the Twitter. And then the first thing I did was realize that some of the authors that I really like are probably on Twitter. And then I found David Graeber. It was like he was the first person I followed. It was the first person the Deerhoof account followed. And I actually got to know him. You know, it was crazy, through like DMs and stuff. And he like came to our shows, and it turned out he was already a fan, and it was like
that's
madness,
wow.
know. And I've made a lot of friends. I mean, the post that I reposted just 2 days ago that you reacted to from Stephen Thrasher, who's a professor. I met him through Twitter. Same thing. I just loved one of his articles. It was right around the Pulse nightclub event. And he wrote about it more eloquently and more movingly than anyone else that I was reading at the time. And I just, made some post about how I thought this article was really worth reading. And he immediately replied to me, I'm just some nobody, We just got to be really close friends. And so I loved doing Twitter. And, our Twitter got, I mean, I don't know by anybody else's standard. By my standards, it got huge. We had, I don't know how many followers, maybe 20 or 30,000. And it was a lot. And I started getting reposted by people that I really respected and followed. And it was just like wild. But then as soon as the Heil Hitler thing happened, I'm like, it was the same as the Spotify.
Yeah.
It took me 5 minutes. I was like, forget it. Yeah. And I checked with my bandmates. They're like, no, whatever, screw it, So I said, okay, we're off of here. That's it. We're done. And it needed to be timely. When it's in the news, don't think about it for a year. It's just like, no, trust your gut.
Because that builds like,
Exactly.
you do that, someone else sees that, there's a momentum to it.
Even if there wasn't.
Yeah.
Even if 0 people also quitted Twitter, and if 0 people quit Spotify, fine. We don't want to be on it, know? And we can't sleep at night, and that's priority 1, our own mental health, and so, yeah. So basically, that was kind of recently, the Heil Hitler was recent, and so at that point, I'm like, I had been in the habit of writing a lot of text posts. I'm like, well, okay. Guys,
I love the text post.
Can I put it on Instagram instead? They're like, yeah, fine. What my bandmates are totally fine with it.
So was that recent? Because maybe that's why the algorithm.
I started doing it more.
Yeah, because I think my algorithm was
there.
showing you to me more because I was engaging with those types of posts, and then I was suddenly like, wow, Greg's like anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist analysis is so deep and compelling, and like to have this audience specifically, like a music audience,
that's the other
receive
thing.
this.
It's not like, I mean, the only reason I even bothered to start was just because I knew that we did have audience, and Ed had done such an amazing job of building up our Instagram following that it was like, basically I got handed a following.
Right.
And it's like, well, I can't really not say anything, I mean,
some
look what's
people
going on.
do.
I know,
but
I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, passion passion is a big part of the way our music sounds. It's a big part of the way we play, and so I feel it too when and it's I think that we're small enough that it's not like I imagine that we will do a thing and then everyone else is going to do it too, or that we will actually have a tangible influence on culture or society, other than it's just there's this following already there. And I know, as a person who's also consumes media and not just creates it, that it is very beneficial to my state of mind when I can read that somebody else is also thinking what I was thinking.
Yes.
That opinion is not appearing anywhere in the mainstream discourse, or on the corporate media. And it's like, am I insane? Am I the only person who've seen this glaring contradiction here, or this is obviously a genocide, and why is nobody calling it that in the news, And then to see somebody call it that, I'm like, thank goodness, I'm not going insane.
It's very
I'm
affirming.
Not alone.
Yeah.
And and you start to realize that it's more than just the people who work at corporate media have already learned to not say certain things because their oligarchical overlord wouldn't want to print it anyway, and they'd probably lose their job, or it would get edited down to something that sort of inoffensive to power. It's that it really is an industry. It's an industry that's meant to create isolation and hopelessness on purpose, because that is profitable in and of itself. And isolation and hopelessness, and I would say more recently chaos and destabilization. I mean, there was a time, when you're talking about Tropicalia, we're talking about an era, the Kissinger, era of install stable dictatorships that are friendly to Western corporations.
Stable to Western power.
Exactly. Are friendly to that will be a friendly market to American corporations. And it would seem that that's not really even the strategy anymore. We're not trying to install a stable dictatorship. We're trying to destabilize everything, because it's actually more profitable to invest in AI weaponry, because AI weaponry will be relevant no matter what, no matter how unstable every country on the globe is. You're praying for civil war.
Chaos
you can
is
back
the name
both
of the
sides.
game. Yeah.
And not because you're a cartoon villain who just likes chaos for its own sake. You may also be that, and some of the famous people do give off that vibe. Musk, obviously, seems to enjoy the chaos for its own sake, but as an aesthetic pleasure. But it's also simply a numbers game. That is, and see, that's what I've been trying to say. Over the course of our lifetimes, we've seen, yes, a tie between weapons and power and money, but it's become so exaggerated now that if you are rich and you've run out of ways to profit,
that's the one. That's
lane. The one that's left.
Yeah,
is start killing people. When you can't, you've sucked the global population completely dry. There's no more money to suck out of them, because you've already fleeced them. You've already gouged them. You've already inflated at them. There's no, and the mandate of capitalism is that your bottom line must continue to grow, and you're already at hundreds of billions of dollars. How are you going to grow? It's the only thing left is weapons. And that's why you say even the boards of universities, it's everything, the only way we can make money now. And so at some point, It's like, okay, this thing where like, oh, I got an ad for Target and I got a good payday. I'm hacking the system. I'm winning. It's like at some point, I predict that this period from the Gap ad till now, that period is going to end. And people will realize, you know what, it's too much of a sacrifice. Like there's literally no way to quote unquote win in this game without backing global war, you know?
And I think
and not just war, but a new kind of war that includes nuclear weapons and AI targeting and AI decision making that, like, who among us, who listening to this podcast could promise any of the rest of us that AI will not decide to obliterate an entire population because of whatever its commands were, whatever its mandate was in terms of maximizing profit? I mean, it's like, we really want to have AI warfare? Like, this is not like, you know, war in the 18th century. This is not Napoleon stuff.
No,
this is like
the sci-fi,
one button.
The sci-fi stuff we were warned about.
Exactly.
And I think the thing that no worries. The thing that, you know, we're playing soccer under the table. But the thing that feels really clear is, like, I think as Americans, we had a bit of a luxury for a long time in feeling like it was something we could separate ourselves from. And some of us were out there, you know, protesting against the Iraq war and could see, you know, just like from a moral standpoint, like, that's just wrong. But I think now it's also like we can't even separate ourselves from, like, the violence that is being done in Palestine or in the Sudan or in Haiti or the Congo or in Latin America or anywhere around the world of this kind of imperial violence. Like, that's Césaire, the other French named scholar we were trying to remember. That boomerang coming back of like Palantir, you know, and the collaboration with ICE, which obviously Biden had started that partnership before the Trump administration, right?
I mean, it was Obama who ICE started under
Tom
Bush,
Homan,
but it was Obama who expanded it massively
and something I feel like people don't really know is that Trump's current ICE, the Tom Homan, the chief, he was under Obama. He was when people called Obama the deporter in chief, it's because it's the same guy. It's
behind the scenes, it's always
I mean, he's not even now. He's not behind the scenes because now he's
now he's in the news.
He's out and about. So what is our from as musicians, like we live in this empire. We make music because we love to make music and because it's what we've always done. And, you know, as we're living through the decline of empire, which is turning out to be quite violent within and without, like, you know, it's from the very macro stuff of climate crisis to deportations and all of these things kind of coinciding, genocide, all this stuff. How do you see your role as a musician? Like, obviously social media, you're like, all right, I have a platform, I have an audience. What about on stage? What about in the music? Like, what do you think? Do you think the music has a role to play? And are you thinking of yourself as a musician in that way?
I mean, it's a really good question. And I think anybody you'd ask would have a different answer and they would all be valid. I mean, for me, making music is like mostly a coping mechanism. That's the way it feels to me. I feel that I learn what my point of view is about, and it could be a point of view about our species. It could be a point of view about history. It could be a point of view about power and coercion and control. It could be a point of view about violence. It could be about psychological manipulation and tricks and propaganda. It could be about the appreciation of the planet and its, animal and plant life and minerals and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything that would appear to be relevant to what you're talking about. It's like, politics. Like anything that comes up there, any topic that might come up when you're talking about politics, and any of the things I just listed might be one of those, fields of inquiry or whatever, or one of the relevant, things you're thinking about. I find that making art is the way that I teach myself what my opinion is on any of those things. And it's by, like the most recent record we made is the one that I remember. But it was by making the record that I figured out what my politics are, that I figured out what my attitude towards genocide is. It's like I could have been a little kid and around the time that I heard Start Me Up, and somebody would have asked me what's my opinion on genocide, and I'd probably say bad.
I think it's bad.
I think it's bad. But when you're faced with it every day and you're the one enabling it, your thoughts become a little bit more complicated about it, and of course when it's being used as a trick. For why you must back genocide and do not dare say the word, or you're going to get it even worse. And that whole trick, that fait accompli, of like, you don't have a choice, and it's designed to make you go insane. And in order to not go insane, one thing that I do is make albums. Another thing I do is play music with my friends and play the drums. And it sounds strange, but it's like, it's not like Deerhoof is productive because of some, Protestant work ethic or something. It's because we have a lot to cope with, not us in particular, but just people in general. And this is our way. We found a way that is helpful to us with each other, that we work through our feelings, and sometimes, obviously one of the defenses that becomes habit forming is extreme compartmentalization and extreme, hardening of your heart. And it just, in order to function day to day, you're just having to put enormous amounts of emotionally triggering news out of your mind,
and then you don't even have time to process it because there's another onslaught.
There's already another one. Exactly. And so music, we have found, is for us a great way to process it, to process feelings. It's really, I mean, to me, that's my strongest personal answer to your question is like, what are you doing as if there's a connection between music and society, or music and politics, which is really saying the same thing. That is it for me, is that music is among the many things that music is and can be and has been down through the eons. One of those things is processing difficult, complicated feelings. So the music isn't like, oh, here's the happy song, here's the sad song, It's like, no, kind of like multi-layered, really complicated feelings. It's like the songs are violent, but the songs are sweet, but the songs are like innocent, but they're really dirty, and they're ambivalent, and they're protesting, and they're incredibly angry, and they're loving, and they're cheerful, and they're jokes, and they're serious, and they're about dying, and they're about being born, and and like they're about each other, and they're about the audience, and they're about speaking to the audience in a way that the audience understands that maybe people outside might not understand. It's a way of connecting, inside of a plotting the revolution, and it's like, I think that for me, making statements on social media is like just something I feel like is just a sort of obvious duty because we have a lot of followers, and I just feel like, how are you not going to? But the actual act of making music for me is much richer and much more complicated and much kind of that's the thing that I cannot stop doing, I'm not doing it out of a duty. It's just like a totally driven, an obsession,
No, but all of that polyphony that you just talked about, those layers and layers, like that is what Deerhoof sounds like,
cool,
you
thanks.
know?
Good,
So
I'm
like
glad.
in that sense of like, I feel like somehow the aesthetics and the sort of like musical values always kind of come back around, like
Cool.
like when you're talking about, is there a thing we can make that AI can't replicate? Like for me, especially like free improvisation or like those real, like the real freakouts, and
Right,
the
right.
computer doesn't know how to
freak
freak out like that.
Right,
Even like
totally.
George Lewis of the legendary AACM, when he made the improvising computer, it
Right,
can't
exactly.
do what people on stage can do, and and I think like, I mean, I think it's kind of up to all of us, sort of have a different worldview and skill set and way, and I feel like Deerhoof's like tricky and playful and just polyphonic on all those levels of meaning where you can interpret it, and feeling like it's like this little not little, you have a large audiences and you have followers, but like being here at Pioneer Works the other day, I did feel it's like, okay, we're all here together, and everybody, like people, there was also like, there's younger people,
Right.
there's older people, there's people that know the band from that Iraq War era. There's maybe
Totally.
people who are coming into this
it's
music
wild.
now.
No, it's the most gratifying, staggering.
It's incredible. And so I've just been like, I don't think I'd been at a Deerhoof show in a while, and it was, I think, interestingly, it was partly, I mean, I'm here at Pioneer Works and I was probably going to come regardless, but it was it was partly because getting reacquainted with where your head was at recently through your Instagram, because I hadn't seen you in a very long time.
Totally.
That brought me back into it in a different way. And with like you're saying, like at a different time in life, looking at this music again.
Exactly.
And also thinking of like how, we're all trying to find ways to cope, but also I think about it as strategies. And
Yes.
like, I like, hearing about this idea of like opacity, and that
Yes.
is a kind of a strategy. I think I have a bit more bludgeony one where I'm
Right.
like, okay,
Yes.
I'm on stage and I have the microphone, so I want to say all the things I'm thinking,
Right.
But those are just different strategies.
Yeah, I think that I think another strategy that is very interesting, that I think also fools any power that is surveilling you. And that could be on social media. It could be, scraping of your musical content, whatever. Is a strategy that I heard about long ago, before Deerhoof ever started, that I thought was very interesting. That's sort of a contrasting strategy to the freak out or the bludgeon, which is when you know that your statements are being surveilled and censored and watched very carefully under an authoritarian regime of any kind, one thing you can do is say all of the things that you're allowed to say in a monotone type of robotic voice, and then just continuing along in the same robotic voice, you slip in one announcement that you know everybody is waiting, like some kind of cue, or that everyone's waiting for, like, the attack will happen at this hour, at this place, or whatever. You just say it in the same monotone voice and then just continue on with the reciting the stuff that you were supposed to be. And that may have a chance, that you've it slips past the censors,
We're going to have to start thinking about these things
Well,
seriously.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And I think that part of what we work out in our band is ways of doing that. So in a somewhat unemotive voice, and Satomi sings in a way that is not overtly emotional, that it will appear for large sections of it to be about flowers and pandas and then there will be a message in there. It's somewhat in code, but if you're listening closely, you will get the message, and it's a revolutionary message, and that those who are not listening closely will not trigger their backlash,
right?
Because they can't hear it, they don't understand it.
Because we are going to have to organize amongst ourselves, and I mean, do you feel hopeful at all right now? It does feel really dire, and obviously, there is a burden of, like, once you start to see all the connections, and once you start to have the analysis, there is a sort of a heaviness to that, a weight to that. Do you feel at all in this moment? Because I think of Deerhoof as a very optimistic band somehow. Do you have any hope in this moment?
It's like, weirdly, I do. I mean, I don't know. What I said today about Spotify, there were a couple things in there. One was, I actually think Spotify's doing it to themselves, like, partly. I mean, just the level of complete stupidity on their part, like, making it so obvious.
Yeah, it's
you know what
just
I mean?
total hubris.
There are... I'm sure that for every rich, powerful, famous oligarch, there's also a rich, powerful, not famous oligarch working behind the scenes. But it just so happens that right now we're confronted with a lot of oligarchs who actually love the spotlight.
Yeah.
And just
and think that they are made for it somehow, even when they're not.
Put their foot in their mouth every chance they get, and are just, making total fools of themselves in public, in front of a quantity of public unheard of in the history of humankind. I mean, and there does seem to be a shift. I mean, you have brought up several times 2003 and the run up to the Iraq War, and I think it's very interesting to compare, say, the run up to the Iraq War and the decision to annihilate Palestine. The amount of work that George Bush and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and Donald Rumsfeld had to do, and the amount of time that they spent to sell this, how important it is that we invade Iraq. I mean, it was like a year. They went on TV. It was press conferences. They were quoted in newspaper. They went absolutely wild with the propaganda. It was obvious that they felt an intense pressure to convince people, convince public opinion that we were going to get blown up by an A-bomb if we did not invade Iraq. And to compare that to Joe Biden and the level of total anti-democracy that Biden demonstrated to show how far it had come. And I really felt that Biden ushered in a new level of fascism in American history, in one that even Hitler did not enjoy, because Hitler also worked overtime on propaganda, him and Goebbels, to convince Germans that they were fighting for a real cause.
And to do some things undercover so people didn't really quite know what was going on.
Oh, everything was undercover, but he had a public version of it.
Right.
Obviously, everything was secret.
But now nothing is.
Now Joe Biden is like, I'm not even going to do a press conference.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking any interviews. I'm just bombing, you know? And I'm going to get some spokespeople to go up there and lie. And then the media's... because I've already had it proven to me enough times that the media is not going to... It's not going to question you.
Yeah.
So
they're all on the same page.
I don't need to. And then it comes out, it's like, okay, well, it's in an election year of all things. And so you're literally seeing polls like, well, what does the voter think of this? And it's like Democrats are overwhelmingly against it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't care.
Yeah.
And then it's like, Harris takes over when he finally does show his face in public, and obviously faceplant,
It's not good.
and it wasn't good. And so, and then Harris's promise is, I'm not going to change policy at all.
At all. No. But we're going to do it with joy or whatever.
We're going to do it with vibes or whatever.
With vibes.
And it just shows, total disregard. And Harris's internal polling after the election was confirmed to have shown every time they did a poll of Democrat voters, she was losing to Trump. And she knew it. The entire DNC knew it. The campaign knew it for months, the months that she was running, that she would lose. And the number one issue that voters who would have voted Harris chose to stay home was genocide.
Yeah.
That was the number one reason given. Mm-hmm. And it's just obvious that Democrats did not care if they lose because they probably make more money losing. They have more scaremongering ability for fundraising if Trump wins, and so that's what I'm saying. It ushers in a new time period in which there's not even a pretense of caring about public opinion. We're not even going to fake it anymore, and we're just going to have characters like Daniel Ek go up in front of everybody and just spill the beans. Peter Thiel, whatever, Trump, Musk. I mean, Zuckerberg, Bezos. They don't. Shame is no longer a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Which also tells us something about strategy. Shaming them
doesn't work. It's not going to work.
So the sort of Rachel Maddow strategy of shaming them, or whatever, a typical Democrat fundraising email strategy of like, how shameful that Republicans did this or that, is completely ineffective. It has zero effect. It is obvious that these people, shame is no longer an element. And so that's what I'm saying. They're actually flushing themselves down the toilet, because that's in a way why I'm hopeful, because now that shame is not an issue anymore, like, and pretending isn't a thing you have to do anymore. It's actually, you have no excuse to be fooled by propaganda anymore.
Like they will bring about the revolution by how much they're overplaying their hand.
If we can manage to, of course, there are still forces that are trying to use shame as a way to force you to vote Democrat.
Yeah, but it's not. It's
get
harder.
A genocidal and AI weaponry result. But yes, it's getting harder to believe, and my hope is that that there's no excuse now. That there's no Democrat in the White House whose reputation we have to protect.
No.
There's no Democrat-led House of Congress that we have to protect in an election year. It's like there's no excuse anymore.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for just telling it like it is. And so that's my hope.
That's hopeful. I read a book by Omar El-Akkad. It's a very small text called
Like you need glasses to wear it.
Yeah. Teeny tiny microscope. No, it's a short book, but it was written in the last in the last year and a half, and it's called, Everybody Will Have Always Been Against This.
Exactly.
And
totally.
he talks about non-participation as kind of, what it finally came down to was there was a point where people said, I can't take part in this anymore.
Well, that's what we did today.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for doing that. I thank
You're
you. I thank you for doing that.
Piece of cake.
I've been meaning, I haven't used Spotify as a platform as a listener since 2018, but my music is on there because I just the label wants to do whatever. It's like it's already so hard to get this music out there, I guess whatever. But I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it now because it really there's a line, and so I think I will say I believe it matters, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, and that's why I'm grateful that you're putting this out there on social media. And I feel like having these conversations is another way where it's like, oh, people I like Deerhoof was okay. Let's give you, I like that music. Well, here's all this other stuff that it's not disconnected from the music, but maybe it can help raise consciousness in some way. And that's my hope. And that's why I'm doing this. So thanks,
Cool.
Greg.
Oh man, thanks for having me. It's
Awesome
so fun.
to talk to you. I'm sure we have lots more to talk about, but I got to let you go. But
All right.
thanks for being on.
Yay, thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was my interview with the absolutely delightful Greg Saunier. If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more like it, please subscribe and follow on Substack at Amrita Kidambi under Outernational, and rate and review on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Outernational is produced by Z Park, recorded at Pioneer Works in Brooklyn, and engineered by me. I'll play you out with Deerhoof's immigrant songs from their new record, Noble and Godlike in Ruin. Until next time, solidarity.
I was the driver of the guest to your party.